Good evening and thank you for joining us for News from a Catholic Perspective. I'm Wyatt Goolsby in for Lauren Ashburn. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin meet face-to-face for the very first time. It happened on the sidelines of the Group of 20, or G20 summit, which begins today in Hamburg, Germany. President Trump is on a hectic 4-day European visit. Correspondent Mark Irons is following his trip from the White House. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Wyatt. President Trump opened his first meeting with President Putin by raising concerns over Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election. That fulfilled demands by U.S. lawmakers in both parties. The meeting was scheduled for 35 minutes, but lasted more than 2 hours.
President Putin and I have been discussing various things, and I think it's going very well.
Presidents Trump and Putin expressing confidence their meeting will lead to positive results. Their conversation was not open to the press, but Secretary of State Rex Tillerson says the president raised concerns about Russian interference in the U.S. election. Putin denied any role. The Russian leader says they discussed terrorism and cybersecurity, as well as Ukraine and Syria, a point of contention in U.S.-Russia relations. President Trump is calling for Russia to stop supporting Bashar al-Assad's regime in Syria. Despite that tension, Trump calls the talks very good.
We look forward to a lot of very positive things happening for Russia, for the United States, and for everybody concerned.
This year's G20 host, German Chancellor Angela Merkel, says the countries represented here make up 2/3 of the world's population and 3/4 of world trade. And Pope Francis is urging G20 leaders to give absolute priority to the poor, refugees, those suffering, the displaced, and those excluded without national, racial, religious, or cultural distinction. After today's talks, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson announced the United States and Russia have struck an agreement on a ceasefire in southwest Syria set to take place July 9th. It's the first U.S.-Russian effort under Trump's presidency to stem Syria's 6-year civil war. Tillerson says it's the first indication that the U.S. and Russia are able to work together in Syria. Wyatt?
Mark, President Trump also met with the President of Mexico for the first time since taking office. How did that go?
President Trump is calling President Enrique Peña Nieto his friend, but Trump still says he will build the border wall to keep drugs and criminals out of the U.S., and he said today that he is absolutely sure he wants Mexico to pay for the wall. The Mexican president said he hopes to continue a dialogue.
We'll continue to follow those developments. Correspondent Mark Irons at the White House. Thanks, Mark.